There's a term called musical frisson. Frisson is apparently a French word meaning aesthetic chills. At least that's what Slate.com tells me. Assuming the average human has the capability to use context clues, almost anyone can piece together that the term musical frisson refers to goosebumps someone gets when they listen to an emotionally moving song or composition. Mitchell Clover, author of the Slate.com classic, which is skillfully placed above an ED advertisement, mentions Lady Gaga's cover of the Star-Spangled Banner really does the trick for him. I can't argue with Clover here because Lady Gaga is undeniably talented. Also, it would make me a hypocrite because she's the only CD I have in my car right now. But as much as a Lady Gaga fan that I may or may not be, the only song that really gives me musical frisson, without fail, over and over throughout the years is If I Die Young by the band Perry. And I don't blame you for this, Tyler, because I know you thought it was a horrible song, just like I still do. And if you ask me, I don't necessarily think it's appropriate to play at a 14-year-old's funeral, but hey, that's just me. I actually had to stop myself from laughing when it blasted over an intercom, which I guess was the funeral home's idea of a sound system. But I felt bad about wanting to laugh at your funeral. I don't anymore, though, because I know you would have laughed too. It would have been one of those jokes we both knew were inappropriate, so we would never talk about it. But whenever we would hear the song, we'd stifle our laughter and give each other a shame-on-you glare. Seriously, though, Tyler, it's a horrible song, and now I'm stuck getting goosebumps and misty eyes whenever I hear it. Even the band's name is terrible. The band Perry. If they wanted their band to be called that, just call it Perry. But now, because they decided to be so extra, they force countless amounts of people to utter the phrase, the band Perry. It makes the speaker sound like they're having a stroke. The worst part was that the funeral director played a series of top 5 now from every imaginable genre and tried to pass it off as your favorite music. And anyone who was even remotely close to you knew you only liked classic rock. The funeral director was terrible, by the way. I don't know if he was hungover or if he's just always this bad, but I really hope he doesn't work there anymore. He messed up the date that you died and your funeral service date, even though he was reading directly off the directory that we were handed on the way in. I'm pretty sure he messed up your mom's name too, but at that point I was just focusing on not crying. It's a bit silly really, but I've never had a reason for being embarrassed to cry at a funeral, or I did have a reason to be embarrassed to cry at a funeral. Outside of your immediate family, I was the most upset person I could see there. There were so many people at your funeral, Tyler. So many people that saw you every day, and then there was me, the kid you hadn't talked to in a year, yet I was the most upset, and it infuriated me, which made it harder to hold back my tears. No one else was crying, so it felt out of place for me too, so I tightened my jaw and I gritted my teeth, and a few times I had to hold my breath just so I didn't let out a dramatic sob. Even after all that, I cried, but not nearly as much as I could have, so I consider it a success. I don't believe in the afterlife. Many people say death will make you believe in a better place, purely because your desire to see a loved one again is so strong. But as much as I wanted there to be an afterlife where I could see you again, I just never could bring myself to believe it to be true. So even though I'm writing you this letter, I don't believe you will ever read it, because you don't exist anymore. In reality, I'm just writing this for the sake of my own mental health. Regardless of the belief that you don't exist anymore, I feel bad about telling you that not many people cried at your funeral. It's one of the things that helps many people stay off the same edge you were on, the thought that ending their life would negatively impact too many people. The guilt of being selfish enough to die is often the only thing keeping people alive, at least for a while. I'm sorry to say that this thought was not represented at your funeral, Tyler. This thought that everyone will be missed has been proven to be untrue to me. Sure, some people cared like your parents, me, and your little brother who you traumatized with the image of your lifeless body, but that's not nearly enough to leave a hole in this world. I'm sorry, but you just aren't missed enough to make a difference, and I think some people were even happy. It's a sickening thought, but I believe it to be true. Even thinking about such a reaction makes me feel foul that at least one person felt this way. You see, Tyler, about a week after the service, I heard what really happened. Apparently, you told another student you had a crush on her, and she said you were gross. She said you should kill yourself. You said fine. You went home that night, and you did. The next day at school, she tried to get her friends to celebrate with her. On the day of your service, she apparently posted a status update on Facebook saying how happy she was you were out of this world. Last I heard, your mom was pressing charges and she and her family were moving out of the state because she couldn't cope with the bullying. I know I said I didn't believe in the afterlife and therefore angels and demons shouldn't work for me either. There is a part of me, however, that truly does think that she is a demon. One thing that really messed me up about this whole situation was that I was actually planning on calling you the week before you killed yourself. I decided against it because I thought it would be weird. After all, we hadn't talked all year. But I felt like you needed to talk to someone, though, and I still don't know why I felt this way. The only explanation I can think of is some spiritual aura calling for help, and my aura picking up on it, but like I said before, I'm not religious, and spirituality fits in with that. Some of these things stuck with me, though. I still grit my teeth and tighten my jaw to avoid crying in public. The problem is that it gets to the point where I don't really cry ever, but I'm working on that. I ended up, about 6 months later, being on the same edge you were, Tyler. Before you died, I could kind of feel it coming, but I handled it and I calmed down that nagging voice that told me to leave. But after the funeral, all my walls and all my restraints went flying down, and I started thinking about how no one cared enough to cry at your funeral, so why should anyone care enough to cry at mine? And if no one really cared if I died, who cared if I was alive? And I started thinking about how I was the only one who cried at your funeral and how weak that must mean I am. Because as much as I tried not to cry, I couldn't completely stop myself, and if I couldn't control myself, how could I ever hope to control anything else? Then I started questioning who I was in ways that I didn't even think were possible. I started convincing myself that change was the only solution to my problem, and I needed a solution fast. And I entered high school, which I told myself I would never, ever do. Because by the time August came around, I wanted to be spending my time with you in that non-existent afterlife. But I decided to give it a chance and see if I liked it. I didn't. So 4th week of my freshman year, I spent a week in the hospital for stomach problems you really don't want to know about. Because for me, the explosive diarrhea was less embarrassing than wanting to die. I did give high school a chance, though. And at the end of it, I think that's what really separated you and me from having the same legacy. It wasn't just high school I gave a chance, though. I gave myself a chance and I got better. To be clear, I don't credit a hospital with that. I just didn't want to go back there because they made me room with the girls. And my roommate told me she saw a ghost face in the fire that burnt down her house. I saw a 9-year-old call all the girls a whole slew of racial words I didn't even know existed. And they called the sedating drugs booty juice. But I did get better. With time, I realized that more people were affected by your death than I thought. I realized a lot of people cared that I was alive, even if they didn't. And even if they didn't, what matters is that I care if I'm alive. I realized crying at a funeral doesn't make you weak, it makes you human, and having perfect control over your emotions is impossible. I figured out who I was and who I was meant to be, and I put time and effort into becoming that person, and I still am. And even though I have a long way to go, I realize that now, becoming who I'm supposed to be, while extremely helpful, is not the only answer to my ongoing list of problems. I tried to be more patient, and luckily I only had to wait about 2 years to really start to look different. With all the things I realized, I came to understand that although school might not be the most pleasant, the real problem was my attitude and not the schooling. That's not to say I don't still have things to work on. I still don't like to cry, and I rather lash out in anger than let anyone know how I actually feel, but I'm working on that, slowly but surely. I'm impatient. I want these changes to happen quicker, and I want to get surgery now. But there isn't much I can do about that. I still have unhealthy aspects to my personality, probably always will, but I'm nowhere near the person I was when I left your funeral that day, lyrics of "If I Die Young" repeating in my head. So now I'm sitting in my living room, sick on New Year's Eve. I'm trying to figure out why I wrote to you in the first place, and I keep wishing you were here even though I'm well aware that if you were, we wouldn't be talking anymore. I'm grateful to you though, Tyler, because although your death made me realize a lot of horrible things about this world and about myself, I also learned how to cope with them, and I can confidently say I wouldn't be the person I am today without you.